From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, it's just the Tip-Sters with Melissa Morgan.
Ciao, Maine.
If you've got a tip for Melissa, a skeleton in the closet, a snake in the woodpile, that secret ingredient in your grandma's pancake recipe that makes you wish you never found her recipe book under the floorboard of her cabin in the woods. Anything, tell us about it by calling the Tipster hotline at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837, or send an email to jttipsters@gmail.com. And now here's your host, interrupting her letter to Congress, demanding that Halloween be declared a monthly holiday, Melissa Morgan.
More cowbell. I feel like it should be a monthly holiday.
Yes, I know you do.
I think the entire month of October should be celebrated as All Hallows Eve.
Yes, well, if you look at our, as I mentioned last week, if you look at our craft table,
You mean our dining room
it's
table?
It's not a craft. It's a dining room table that has been turned into a craft table downstairs. It's loaded with all sorts of autumnal decoration.
Thank you. Yeah, I just am tired of the heat, and I'm trying to push this year forward and all the shit into the backward, and just it's like, yay, it's Thanksgiving or something. I don't know. I'm just, yeah.
Well, it's lovely down there.
Yeah, it is it's very orange and black. Yeah.
And kind of, dark woodsy tones.
Some burgundies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm enjoying that. It just makes me feel better. It's 115 out, and I'm making scarecrow things, and yeah, it makes perfect sense. Talk about, delusional, just,
She made a little scarecrow thing to put on the door. It's very cute. A little scarecrow. It's so hot outside. The expression on his face, I just can't help it. It just looks like he's going,
And he's sad now. Yeah, he started with a smile, and now it's like, why am I here in the blazing sun, you fucking bitch?
It's a smile, but maybe
it's not really.
It's a smile.
It's a wry smile.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So we wanted to say again, thank you so much to those of you who have left reviews and ratings on Apple Podcasts. We are very grateful. If you have time to do that, and you haven't, we would be even more grateful. It means a lot. It's, we're a small little independent podcast here, and some news stories bring more boys to the yard like a milkshake. And we are grateful for those of you who have found us, and tell a friend, tell somebody you like this podcast, and maybe they'll tell a friend, and so on and so on. And it'll be like herbal essences or whatever. I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm probably going to stop. Shut up. So I wondered if I had done this in the wrong order, because what I wanted to focus on, and it all just leads back to the Long Beach John Doe, what I'd wanted to focus on was the victims of Randy Kraft. Not so much on Randy Kraft. He is, unfortunately, a fascinating pile of shit. And I'd gotten into a little bit of a discussion online with a group of people who say the word monster when talking about Joseph James DeAngelo. And the word monster is just something, it's like an all-encompassing word that we can most of us can kind of agree on. So Dennis McDougal's book, The Angel of Darkness, was released May 1st of 1991. And McDougal received a mid-five figures advance, and he talked to 300 people on and off the record, including Randy Kraft's longtime partner, Jeff Seelig. And we'll come back to the book later and its importance in this story. But one of the heartbreaking things is that there were signs, and they had led to Kraft, and this could have possibly been ended a lot earlier than it was, and a lot more beautiful young men could have been spared. In March of 1970, Randy Kraft met a 13-year-old Westminster boy named Joseph Fancher at Huntington Beach. He liked to prowl and prey on people at the beach. Fancher had told Randy Kraft that he had run away from home that very day. Now, in 1970, Randy Kraft would have been 25. So this 13-year-old boy meets this 25-year-old sort of slick dude, and he says, I've run away from home. And Randy Kraft says, you can come and live with me. I have an apartment. So Joseph Fancher, 13-year-old Joseph Fancher, accompanies Randy Kraft to his Belmont Shore apartment. Belmont Shore is part of Long Beach. And he was drugged and then sodomized. And a few hours later, Randy Kraft goes to work and leaves Joseph Fancher unattended. He runs out of the apartment and is like, please help me. And a citizen summons an ambulance. They take, poor Joseph Fancher, who they can see has been drugged and is disheveled, and they take him to the hospital. They actually have to pump his stomach because of all of the drugs he's ingested.
Oh, my God.
So Joseph Fancher tells police, look, this guy gave me drugs and he beat me, but he didn't tell them that he had been sexually assaulted. He didn't want his parents to know, and he didn't divulge that to the police. So they show up at Randy Kraft's apartment. They conduct a search because his roommate, Jeff Selig's there and consents to the search. But since Joseph Fancher had confessed to the police that he had taken the pills voluntarily, and the officers had conducted the search without a warrant, they couldn't file charges.
Oh, for God's sake. What year was this?
1970.
Oh.
And all of the victims that came after that could have been saved.
That just makes me sick.
I can't blame a 13-year-old boy who doesn't tell the police and his parents that he has been sexually assaulted because it's 1970. I can blame the officers, even though Randy Kraft's roommate, let them in. I can blame them for not having a warrant because this poor kid, it's 1970. Maybe it doesn't dawn on them that a grown-ass man takes a 13-year-old boy to his apartment. He beats him and drugs him. Do they not have an idea of why? Like homosexuality or homosexual serial killers, it's the first time this has ever happened? I don't.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
Right. So you'll find there's another opportunity that this could have been stopped too. But I'm not blaming Joseph Fancher. I'm really not. But if, God forbid, anything happens to you ever in any way, no matter what age you are, please tell someone, because if you survive and, you don't know what a monster might do. I really am not blaming Joseph Fancher. He was 13. He'd run away from home. He obviously had issues of some sort. And then, he doesn't want his parents or the police to know what happened to him.
Well, of course, that it is 1970, and I understand all that. But the fact that the police didn't do more. The thing is, it is, I guess we do have to also remember it was a different time. I mean, that would never happen today. I just don't think it would happen today.
I would hope that if a young boy is taken by ambulance to a hospital, has a stomach pump because a grown man has given him so many pills, even if he says, I took them voluntarily, they would question that statement and they would ask, did this happen to you? Were you, perhaps sexually violated in any way? I mean,
yeah,
we're
much more sophisticated now, and
I hope so.
There's child protective services now. There wasn't that back then, I don't think. And I mean, there's a lot more known, so hopefully, I would pray that today that wouldn't happen.
I would pray so too. So the next sort of large event in Randy Kraft's life is one of the more heartbreaking ones. And it literally involves two young men who were friends of a victim, two victims, only one ended up being murdered. But they did the right thing. And this was 1975. These are citizen detectives who did the right thing, all of the right things. And they were young boys. And they witnessed what happened to their friend. And they still went to the police and they did their own investigation and brought the police the information. And it still didn't help. And ironically, this is the case that could be the code, the parking lot that Randy Kraft used in his scorecard, or parking lot could be the Long Beach John Doe. But in March of 1975, Randy Kraft lures two young boys, Keith Crotwell and Kent Main, into his sort of unique Ford Mustang in a Long Beach parking lot. They were given beer and Valium, and he drove in an apparently random, directionless manner all around Belmont Shore and Seal Beach, waiting for the boys, I think, to become more drugged. So Kent May, the survivor, says, I started to feel a little weird. I guess the Valium and the alcohol, had kicked in, and I passed out. Apparently, Randy Kraft goes back to that parking structure where he'd picked up Crotwell and May. They have two friends who happen to be there. Two friends who know them and happen to see them have gotten into, a few hours earlier, a distinctive black and white Mustang that had left with them and rapidly re-entered the parking structure. It stopped, ground to a halt. The driver opened the passenger side door, pushes the unconscious but otherwise unharmed Kent May onto the pavement. He then slams the door and speeds away. And as he does, the friends of Keith Crotwell and Kent May notice that Keith Crotwell is slumped in the car. Now, on May 8th, about 6 weeks later, Keith Crotwell's skull is found in the water close to the Long Beach Marina. The remainder of his body was found 6 months later. And upon hearing the news, the two friends of Keith Crotwell and Kent May think they saw what happened and they know who the murderer is, and they think he is some sort of resident of the area. They start scouring the neighborhood for the Mustang. They find the Mustang parked less than 1 mile from their home. They write down the license plate and they take it to the police. And the police find that it's registered to Randy Kraft. So on May 19th of 1975, when there's a skull found in the Long Beach Marina, and they still haven't found the rest of Kent Crotwell's body, the Long Beach police question Randy Kraft. At first, he's like, "No, I don't know Keith Crotwell or Kent May." And the cops are like, "Yeah, you know what? We're gonna keep questioning you." So finally, he's like, I might have run into two young kids in a Long Beach parking lot. I might have, invited them to have some alcohol or have a Valium as I drove around. I came back to that parking lot and I returned them, I returned one of them to the parking lot. And then I left Keith Crotwell on the side of the road. My car got stuck on an embankment close to the El Toro off-ramp. So I had to walk to a gas station and call a tow truck, and Keith Crotwell was just waiting in my car. And when I came back to the car, he wasn't in my car anymore.
Oh, boy.
So Jeff Seelig, Randy Kraft's roommate, said, yeah, he did. He called me that day and said that his car was stuck on an embankment. It says here detectives remained unconvinced of his version of the events. And honest to God, the two detectives attempted to file homicide charges against Randy Kraft, but the LA District Attorney's Office dismissed the request, citing that the coroner's conclusion from the autopsy says that Keith Crotwell's death came from accidental drowning. That's why his head was found in Long Beach and his body was found in Laguna Hills.
Okay. What about Kent May? He survived?
Yeah.
But did he help his two friends do all this, or what?
I don't know. The two friends that are not named are the ones that saw what happened.
But we don't know if Kent helped them or...
no.
We just know that he survived.
Yes.
I still don't understand what the district... Anyway.
Yeah, why the district attorney? It's because of a mess of a whole... the coroner said that he died of an accidental drowning. I'm not sure how your skull gets separated from your body and, your body ends up...
It doesn't make any sense.
In Laguna Hills. So Jeff Seelig is actually one of the things that they think kept Randy Kraft from killing many more people, because he had been in a relationship with a student he met while wanting to get his teaching degree named Jeff Graves, but they broke up. Now, Jeff Seelig and he had an unusual relationship. He was a little bit younger, quite a bit younger actually. He was only 19 years old, and he was like a baker when he meets Randy Kraft, who's now 31. So he's quite a bit younger, but they move in together in an apartment in Laguna Hills, which is interesting because that's where the rest of Keith Crotwell's body is found 6 months later. So they call their relationship a permanent relationship, but it's not a monogamous one. Jeff Seelig says, when investigators are contacting him about some of Randy Kraft's terrible things over the years, that, we regularly picked up hitchhikers. We would proposition them, and if they wanted to, they could come back to our apartment for a threesome. But, Randy's never been violent towards me. I have never seen him display violent tendencies. But I can tell you there are lots of pictures. Randy not only kept trophies, a lot of which were found in his home from victims they weren't even sure were tied to him, but he took lots of pictures. So he's apparently a very visual human being. And there's a picture of a young man sitting on their couch in their apartment. It might be the only picture of a victim taken at their home. He took a lot of pictures of the victims and kept them all, but it may be the only picture of a victim.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that he took a lot of pictures.
A lot, which is going to also come into play a little later in the story of another survivor, which I'm going to read, which is interesting, and you can relate and understand, and it's still one of the more frightening things I've ever read, and you don't even know it's frightening until later. At the same time, so we know the 70s and 80s is some sort of banner decades for serial killers. There is a serial killer operating at the same time in the same area named Patrick Kearney, who also picks up young men, young gay men, young straight men. It doesn't matter. He picks up a lot of hitchhikers, and he has confessed to killing 28 young boys and young men, which he did similar things. He would dissect them. He would discard them in trash bags. He was known as the freeway killer. Sometimes he and Randy Kraft are mistaken for each other because of Randy Kraft's tossing the bodies onto roadways. But he is called the Scorecard Killer. I often wish that these serial killers, when the originating agency that's investigating them or arrests them, when they come up with a name, it needs to be one name and everyone needs to follow it. One name. That's why I was so grateful to Michelle McNamara for taking the 7 names of Joseph James D'Angelo, the original Night Stalker, the Visalia ransacker, the East Area rapist, all of the names, and making him the Golden State Killer. There's sometimes you just need one name. So the freeway killer, Patrick Kearney, had a different MO. He would dismember the bodies, but he would shoot them in the temple. And they knew that, Randy Kraft, they didn't know it was Randy Kraft at the time, but they knew they were talking about a different serial killer that was operating at the same time. At one point, Patrick Kearney and Randy Kraft were in the same area of San Quentin. It's just horrifying to me that, they played bridge.
That's still...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty awful. So at least Jeff Seelig is credited with being someone who helped slow down his rampage because he was pretty prolific. Let's just say he was really pretty damn prolific. And we probably don't even know. I mean, he had a scorecard of 61. They believe there are 67 murders tied to him, but there are some, and he has not said one word, not one word. He granted one interview after his arrest, and I believe it was just to talk to the LA Times about how terrible his court-appointed attorney was. We'll get to that.
Jesus. So he's never said anything. The police have figured all of the victims that they've tied to him, the police have done that all on their own.
Absolutely. He still maintains his innocence to this day.
That's amazing.
His 75-year-old fucking shitty self. And every mugshot taken of him, the last one I saw was taken in 2018. And, he's either lost all of his hair or his head is shaved. And every single picture he smiles. That same, I'm just going to call it a shit-eating grin. That same shit-eating grin, he smiles, knowing he's taking all of his terrible deeds with him. It's really, he's just an atrocious human being. So this is in a much longer form, but I'm going to just read the shortened version because it may shine some light on how someone could become a victim of his. I've never hitchhiked. If I didn't have a car, I didn't go somewhere. If I, was too young to drive, I didn't go somewhere unless my mom or grandma or grandpa or somebody took me. It was a different time. The 70s and 80s, different time. People were, a little more loose and open and did things like hitchhike, which is just the thought of it just terrifies me right now. So this young man, his name is Jay Roberts, and he wrote in 2013 for an Orange County magazine a very long form article, and he is a very good writer. He's a very, very good writer. But I'm doing the shortened version because it's filled with a lot of beautiful prose, but a lot of stuff that is probably not as important. So this is a shorter version of what Jay Roberts had happened to him. He was 20 years old in 1980, and he was at the beach, and he was enjoying the day. And he was in the Marines, and he was a sniper. The Marine snipers are tough. And this, 20-year-old kid was a tough kid. He'd been in the Marines for 2 years already, and he had already become a sniper. So he is sitting on the beach, and he runs into someone who starts talking to him. But before we get to his account of what happened, he was looking around the internet, and he comes across something that says there was a serial killer in the 70s and 80s in Southern California who was preying on Marines. And Jay Roberts is like, well, I wonder why I didn't ever hear anything about that. So he looks it up and he sees the picture of Randy Kraft, and he almost loses his mind because he remembers distinctly an afternoon he spent with Randy Kraft and how he got away, but also his explanation as to how maybe people fell under his spell. So here's this 20-year-old handsome young man who totally fits the bill of what Randy Kraft likes. He likes a specific thing, usually around 5'10", light-colored hair, military, handsome. This kid fit the perfect description. And he says, simply put, that afternoon, the serial killer and the young Marine sniper, we were perfect for each other. So here, Jay Roberts is sitting on the beach, and he's talking to this guy, and he says he was engaging and intelligent. We were at this beach in San Clemente. It's the spring of 1980. I'm just enjoying the weather. He's like very warm. He's got a very wry smile, which I'm going to say is a shit-eating smile. We sat on the beach and talked for several hours about everything. Now, at the time, Randy Kraft is 30 and Jay Roberts is 20. So he's like, we talked about books and current events and travel. He said we kind of became pretty fast friends. And as the day kind of ran down in the afternoon, the sun is kind of setting. He says, hey, do you want to come to my motel room? I'm traveling here from Canada, and I'm just staying not far away, and I have some really good beers. And Jay Roberts is like, I normally wouldn't go to a motel room with a stranger, but I really never gave it a thought. We had spent hours talking, and I liked this guy so much, and he seemed so kind and so smart. It never occurred to a Marine sniper that this man was dangerous.
Wow.
So he goes to the hotel, and he said it's like a business type hotel. It wasn't like fancy, but he said to him, a 20-year-old Marine in 1980, it was like the Ritz-Carlton, He follows him on his Kawasaki motorcycle, which is his prized possession. And Randy Kraft parks in the parking lot of the hotel and the parking structure, and he parked outside the hotel. And he said, I just remember it being a dark sedan. So, we're talking and we're having some beer, and it never dawns on me that there's anything weird happening. I'm just enjoying an afternoon I had free with this guy I just met, this business tourist from Canada. And finally, Randy Kraft says, what do you think of sex with guys? And Jay Roberts like, oh. He said he felt like a very long, delayed light bulb went off. And he's like, oh gosh, yeah, I don't know. And Jay Roberts says, I don't know a lot of gay men, or if I do, they haven't told me they're gay, and I'm not intolerant of homosexuality. I'm just unfamiliar with it. And at one point, Randy Kraft says, there's a lot of Marines that like gay sex. And Jay Roberts says, I think if you approach a Marine for gay sex, that's a really good way to get your ass kicked. And Randy Kraft said something that struck Jay Roberts that he has never forgotten. And he said, nah, you just have to get them away from their friends. And it's at that point that Jay Roberts said every ounce of his Marine training came tumbling back into his head, where he was trained as a sniper to separate one from the herd.
Yep, that's boy.
Yeah.
That's what saved his life.
Yeah. But there's more. He kind of realizes now might be the time to go. So he says, I think I better go. And he said, Randy Kraft said, could I just please take a picture of you? And he's like, okay. And he's like, could I take a picture of you with no shirt on? And he's like, okay. So he takes his shirt off, and he said he senses a change in Randy Kraft. And I thought it was going to be a much darker thing. But he said it became a neediness. I sensed a neediness in his eyes. And he was worshiping my young Marine body. And I'm standing in his motel room with my shirt off. And he's taking a picture of me. And I'm thinking, okay, well, this is flattering, but I have to go. And Randy Kraft said, can I take one more picture, maybe with your belt loosened? And he's like, now I've really got to go. It's been a long afternoon. I got to go. And he turns to leave. And before he does, he sees a look on Randy Kraft's face that he can only characterize as disappointment. And he said, I felt really sorry for him. And he said, he made me feel special in the most irresistible way.
Oh my God.
For one impossibly beautiful California afternoon, I was very much in love with him. And I've never had another man before or since affect me that way. Now, those are powerful words.
Oh boy.
From a man who's a Marine sniper who knows that he escaped potentially having his genitals removed, having his nipples burned off with a car lighter. There's probably a lot of Marines that were in his position, and some of those didn't make it out alive. But Jay Roberts did. And you can find the full story on Orange Coast Magazine. I think it's orangecoast.com. And it's a beautiful story. I think it's under The Center of the Universe. I think that's the title. Jay Roberts is a beautiful writer. And he, felt like the center of the universe because that's how Randy Kraft made him feel. And that's one of those things that may explain how his victim list is so large, how he got away with so much. So it takes until 1987 before they can finally tie Keith Crotwell's murder to Randy Kraft, 1987. So the history of Keith Crotwell's murder, March 30th of 1975. He's seen in Randy Kraft's car. May 8th, his skull is found in the Long Beach harbor. May 10th, they release the name of Keith Crotwell after the dental charts say that it's him. May 13th, the friends of Keith Crotwell said, look, there was a Mustang that picked him up, and they reported to the police. May 19th, Long Beach police investigate Randy Kraft at his house. He's like, I don't remember meeting him. Then later on, yeah, I met him and I let him off, and then blah. He's released. At the end of May of 1975, Long Beach prosecutors declined to file charges. June 21 of 1975, Randy Kraft is arrested at a beach restroom in Long Beach and charged with misdemeanor lewd conduct. He receives a $200 fine and 5 days in jail. This is a month after they have interviewed him in the murder of Keith Crotwell. June of 1975, he's still listed by the coroner as a possible drowning victim, and it's put on the back shelf because they have to turn their attention to all these young men who are being murdered. October of 1975, 6 months later, skeletal remains of a body with a head missing are found in Laguna Hills, where Randy Kraft and Jeff Seelig had lived, and within 2 miles of where he said his car got caught on an embankment and he let Keith Crotwell out. Here's the other thing. Long Beach investigators are not communicating with Laguna Hills, where the rest of the body has been.
Yeah, there's that same old story.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in different counties.
Yep.
And
And then we jump to 1983, May of 1983, where Randy Kraft is arrested by CHP officers in Mission Viejo with dead Terry Gambrell in his car. And I can't believe, I wonder how they felt, how two CHP officers feel pulling over a man for driving erratically, how they feel when they think, you know what? I think this might be the guy who has killed so many people. I can't,
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. No kidding. So here's Randy Kraft's case year by year, because the chronology is pretty intense. And I will tell you, Jerry Hicks has covered the Randy Kraft case from top to bottom for the LA Times, and he did an amazing job. So we know he's arrested May of 1983. There's a preliminary hearing September of 1983, where he is charged with 16 murder charges. November of 1983, Judge John Ryan orders Kraft to stand trial on all of the 16 murders. He seals from public view the scorecard list that was found in his car. November 25th, 1983, Kraft lawyer Fred McBride quits the case, and that's after Randy Kraft had attacked him in a LA Times interview. So that's the only time he spoke, was in November of 1983, and his court-appointed attorney quits after that interview, and he has never spoken again about what he did. December 16th, 1983, Deputy District Attorney Brian Brown files notice with the court that he will accuse Kraft of an additional 20 murders in the penalty phase of the trial, including 6 murders in Oregon and 2 in Michigan. 1984, Superior Court Judge James Turner permits the first of more than a dozen postponements in his trial, stretched out over the next 4.5 years, and all of these are from the defense's request. August 6th of 1984, his court-appointed attorney, Douglas Otto, is relieved from the case at Kraft's request. Co-counsel James Merwin, who had replaced McBride, he remains. The same week, Chief Deputy Public Defender C. Thomas McDonald resigns his post and joins Merwin as co-counsel for Kraft. How does a Chief Deputy Public Defender resign his post, and then becomes a co-counsel as a paid attorney?
The state can...
private attorney?
Yeah, the state can appoint a private attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, the court can do that.
Okay. So May of 1985, Kraft's attorneys persuade Superior Court Judge Louis Cardenas that the case is so massive that a third attorney is needed to defend him. The judge appoints William Copany, who also resigns from the public defender's office, to take the position. April 30th, 1985, Prosecutor Brown files an amended complaint accusing Kraft of one more penalty phase murder, making that total 37. May 1st of 1986, Judge Cardenas agrees to a defense request for a new trial date of January 12, 1987, following a 2-week hearing. 1987, January 14th, over vigorous objections from prosecutors after a 2-week hearing, Cardenas permits the defense its 8th delay in the trial date. August 18th, 1987, Judge Turner, after another lengthy debate over the trial date, finds the defense no longer has grounds to delay the trial. 4.5 years of trying to delay the trial. He orders the trial to begin immediately after the search warrant hearings, scheduled to end in December. August 22nd, 1987, Judge Turner begins a search warrant hearing that will ultimately span 8 months. December 29th, 1987, Judge Turner undergoes emergency heart surgery, which puts the trial on hold again.
My God.
He's removed from the Kraft trial, but will continue with the search warrant hearing after his recuperation. So he got some lucky things. He got his defense attorneys to postpone. So February of 1989, he is on trial, and Jerry Hicks of the LA Times again writes about the parade of Randy Kraft's neighbors and former co-workers who testified that he was a neat, clean, likable, cheerful person to work with. These character witnesses come after Superior Court Judge Donald A. McCartan decided to not let jurors see an anonymous letter of confession that was sent to authorities after Kraft was arrested in 1983. So 6 years earlier, they had received an anonymous letter from someone named Les, who confessed to numerous murders of young men in Orange County, and he said, "Randy Kraft has been falsely blamed for my work." In this letter, Les says, "I'm the new Zodiac. I've come to liquidate the evil boys and men of this area. My method will or has been the rope." So, my method will or has been. So, will, Les is talking in the future, probably before he's ever killed anyone because he's not real. And Randy Kraft strangled a lot of his victims and then tortured sometimes before and after, but not always or ever with a rope. Typically, their shoelaces, their belts, his hands. So,
Did anybody know who Les was?
No.
Just some freak that wrote
Yes.
that letter. Okay.
Or a friend of Randy Kraft's, I don't know. Prosecutors and law enforcement officials say, look, this letter is phony. And Kraft's attorneys are like, we want this admitted into evidence right now. And Judge McCartan is like, this doesn't even come close to meeting the standards of something that could be admissible to the jury. Not even close. Jurors did get to hear Carol Barnett, his co-worker, say he was a fine person, he was considerate, thoughtful, I really liked him. She worked with him at JL Products in Gardena. He was a computer consultant, and that is how we know he was able to kill the young men in Oregon, because he had been transferred up there for a short period of time on a work project, and that's why he was able to do what he did in another state. And there was a moment in the trial where Carol Barnett got everyone to laugh, including Randy Kraft, accidentally, when she said that you could always tell if he was irritated because his neck would turn red. And apparently that was, probably needed to laugh in this trial. Probably needed to laugh a lot. So the Orange County prosecutors filed papers in the Santa Ana court accusing him of 29 additional murders. So with the 16 he's being charged for, that's 45. but there's still 16 on his scorecard list that we don't know who they are. And I will tell you that Judge McCartan, there is a picture from November 30th of 1989 from the LA Times that will break your heart. Because every picture of Randy Kraft shows him with that creepy-ass smile on his face in court. Sometimes he has the big creepy mustache, sometimes he doesn't. But the pictures of how he affected everyone else in this case, not just the victims and their family members, but anyone who worked on this case in any kind of way, they can't not be affected. There's one juror who says, I still shut my eyes and I see the evidence. I don't know that there's going to be an end of this until he's gone. Her name is Carol Neal. She was a juror. And Carol, he's 75 and he's still alive in San Quentin, smiling for his mugshots. The jurors take 2 weeks and they come back and find him guilty. And Judge McCartan, this picture where he has his hand on his head, you can see the pain in his eyes. And even with 16 murder charges, Judge McCartan only reads one victim's story because he says, I don't know how any type of person can do this to another human being. He reads the story of Mark Hall. And Mark Howard Hall was a 22-year-old beautiful boy who was found in Silverado Canyon in January of 1976. His genitals have been removed. His eyes and nipples have been burned out with a car cigarette lighter. His eyes. His mouth is packed solid with dirt, and his body has been punctured with swizzle sticks, including one shoved into the genitals, which have been removed. And his body has been wrapped around a tree and tied with a trash bag. As the judge reads the terrible things that Randy Kraft is accused of, Lois Hall, Mark's mom, starts to cry. And the judge looks straight at her and says, I don't know any type of person who could do that to another human being. As he's sentenced to the gas chamber for 16 murders, he sits with his chin on his hand. And when he gets a chance to speak, he says, I haven't murdered anyone. And with any reasonable review of this, the record will show that. 10 of the 12 jurors sat through the punishment phase of his trial because they wanted to see justice done for this case that had taken a year of their life. So here, this book, The Angel of Darkness, comes out that Dennis McDougal, who had started writing for the Long Beach Press-Telegram, gets bumped up to the LA Times. He writes this book that is very well regarded and, like I said, takes the time to talk about the victims. It isn't just all about Randy Kraft. But in May of 1993, Randy Kraft files a $62 million lawsuit against Dennis McDougal and says that the book Angel of Darkness smears his good name and unjustly portrays him as a sick, twisted man and hurts his prospects for future employment.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah.
For future employment.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah. Well, McDougal's got the advantage that Kraft is a convicted killer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to sue for slander or libel when you're a convicted killer.
Yeah. So the suit is dismissed in June of 1994 as being frivolous. The judge says, Randy Kraft has no reputation left to damage, and that's liable proof as a matter of law. That's exactly what you just said. It's hard to claim something as liable when you're a convicted murderer.
Yeah.
The part that bothers me is that Dennis McDougal had to pay about $50,000 in legal fees to defend the book against this piece of shit that is still alive in San Quentin. Have I mentioned that enough times, 100 times? I literally, I know I couldn't get any sort of a Molotov cocktail through the window. I wish someone would take him out. And in the way he killed so many incredible young men who, like Jay Roberts, may not have known what was happening. May have just been at a time when I'm a young kid and this guy's, smart and funny and telling me I'm smart and we're laughing and, hey, do you want a beer? Hell yeah, I'd like a beer. I can't even imagine the young boys that when they knew what was going to happen to them, the guilt they may have felt. I can't believe I trusted this person. I don't know what I was thinking. And by then it's too late. At least Jay Roberts got out. And poor Mr. Fancher, who's 13, and doesn't want to tell his parents or the police what actually happened to him, but at least got away. Those two men are the only ones we have left that we know of that know what happened, what his MO was like, what his way of moving through the world was like, how he managed to get the people that he did. And I will say that Jeff Seelig did one thing right, and that he encouraged Dennis McDougal, who had tracked him down, to try and write Randy Kraft one more time in prison, because Dennis McDougal had talked to everyone involved in the trial, neighbors, witnesses, and had sent numerous letters to San Quentin, to Randy Kraft, and he didn't answer any of them. And something Jeff Seelig said must have opened a door, because Dennis McDougal tried one more time, and he sent a letter to Randy Kraft, and Randy Kraft answered, giving no answers to any of the questions that Dennis McDougal asked. 2 pages, single-spaced, typewritten letter saying, I'm innocent. And all the ways you could say, I'm innocent.
Not real helpful, but at least it's a response.
Yeah, I don't know what he said that got Randy Kraft to answer him, because I don't know. But with all of that information, if any of the John Does that were listed in the last episode ring any kind of bell, and I know there are some amazing people out there that have access to so many things on the internet. I've already been contacted by some beautiful people who think that the Long Beach John Doe is someone who's been missing from Canada. We'll see. I don't know if that's true or not, but I love the fact that they keep looking, that they care, that they want to try and figure out some of these throwaway people, these people that were thrown away, thrown into the street, in a parking lot, in a ravine, by a monster. And that's the word I'm going to use. By a monster. If you have any information about any of the people listed, the 19 people that we talked about in the last episode, please contact the LA County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau at 323-267-4800. That's 323-267-4800, and more cowbell.
If you'd like to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.